This is Timothy Gordon announcing a new section of Aristotle's Ethics Live beginning January the 19th, taught by me in person on Zoom. It's going to be Tuesday nights at 7 for the whole family. All ages are welcome. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is life-changing. Learn it with me on Tuesday nights. For more information, go to the Enroll tab on timothyjgordon.com.
What's up, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades? Merry Christmas Octave. This is the first Rules for Retrogrades that I've done since Christmas, so I hope you are all having an amazing time at home with your families in this weird, funky old world. I've got my friend Christopher Plance, Mr. Chris Kringle, the big red ginger, whatever else you want to call him. What's up, Chris? It's good to have you back, bro.
What's up, man? It's good to be back. How's everything going with you?
It's good. It's going in a Mississippian way. How the heck is California? The same as I left it?
Yeah, pretty much the same, maybe worse. But no, everything's good out here. So, yeah. How's the dissertation coming? Well, you're not writing it yet. That's right.
Yeah, no, it's a twinkle in my eye at this point. The dissertation. I look. Check this out, man. I got doctoral studies. I'm still finishing the minor coursework that they want me to do. I haven't really announced what program I'm at, just because I don't want them to get doxxed. But so I'm finishing up coursework mostly this spring.
You're at USC, aren't you?
USC, yeah, University of Southern California. Yeah, and I make the commute every day too, dude. I travel right by your house in North LA there.
He's actually studying at Berkeley, everyone. Don't say anything.
Yeah, well, you just gave it away. Those are the two places I'm dissertating. No, I mean, I'm like, literally, I have these courses. I took 3 courses this past semester. It was a lot of work to finish the semester. I'm teaching 3 courses. Remember, people, I'm starting a new Aristotle's Ethics course January the 19th. Get in that. I'm writing or editing 3 books. Right before I called you, Chris, I was doing the final edits on the feminism book, and I'm writing 2 new ones, one of which we're going to talk about today. And then I try to bust out 3 shows of Rules for Retrogrades a week, and it's made me the busiest I've ever been. So maybe some people are just psychos and they like being busy, but I like chilling with my family. So we've really been taking the downtime this Christmas, and I hope you have too, Chris. You're always a busy cat as well. Yeah.
No, it's nice, this little 2-week break for Christmas and New Year's, and it's been nice just spending a lot of time with the family. We had rain today in California this morning. It was pouring rain. I was like, wow, it's the first time in
You've ever seen it, right? You've never seen rain there.
Yeah, I know.
Did you know what was happening? Literally water falls from the sky. That's what happens in a rain event. It just starts watering.
Yeah.
Californians don't know. They're like, what the hell is this, man?
They're like, what? We woke up in the middle of the night. We're like, whoa, what's going on? Like, we heard thunder clouds and everything. We heard thunder, saw the rain clouds. It was pretty, yeah. My little girl was scared last night. She came in bed, Daddy. But no, it's cool. Everything's
you wished you knew how to explain to her what rain was, but you two are a Californian. The rest of the country doesn't know what we're talking about. Californians literally never get rain. It's a desert, and that's the.
And it's always scary when we do get rain, because that means that everything's gonna grow only to be burned in the summer.
That's right. You grow it to burn it.
Yeah.
Kind of like our republic, right? The founding fathers grew it up, and now it's being razed to the ground. Well, that's a whole other thing. But what I wanted to talk to you about, Chris, here in this show, kind of a booster show for my appearance tomorrow on Matt Fradd, and kind of just a booster show in between Christmas and New Year's. This is always a week where everyone's kind of just chilling out. Vatican Two. I mean, you and I'm going on Fradd tomorrow to talk about my defense of the Vatican Two documents from a traditionalist point of view, or just from a Catholic point of view, but a traditionalist point of view.
I've never been more proud of you in my entire life. Never been more proud of you.
Oh yeah. No, I know. Well, you exercised a serious influence on me here. You and DeClue, he contacted me last spring about this time of the year last year through you. And you guys, of course, had some videos on Vatican Two. And it's just that you're not really making arguments. You're more just pointing out lines in the documents that traditional-minded or right-wing general Catholics never hear, because we kind of get these proof-texted lines from the sacred constitutions of Vatican II, and few people go read them. And yet you pointed out a lot of stuff to me that was deeply influential. Like, wow, this is not the same thing, the Vatican II magisterium, as the Francis magisterium. It's the opposite. When you look at, you comment on this, I don't know where you're at on Francis these days, but this is where I've always been on Francis. You look at something Francis wrote in an encyclical or an exhortation, and not only is it as bad as the popular, anti-Francis people are saying, but it's 10 times worse. There's stuff you didn't even know, because even his worst critics aren't talking about it, simply because there's such a sheer volume of things to point out. Vatican II is the opposite. You look at where the critics in the documents, I'm not talking about what happened during the council. A lot of that's true. There are a lot of bad guys there. I'm still on that point of view strongly. But in the documents, you look at the places, and this is really where you kind of awoke me from my dogmatic slumbers, or helped to. You go look, and it's way, way better than you thought, or there's just an outright misquote, which is what the Francis people are always saying happens to Francis, but that's not right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, it's interesting, the history of how we got thrown into this, because, we started the show Rules for Retrogrades last year, over a year ago, and I don't think this was on our radar, Vatican II, or was it kind of a little bit? And then all of a sudden this came out of left field, and we're both like, okay, we got to address this. So then we just dove right into researching all these issues. Some stuff, because I took a Vatican II class in studying for my master's, I knew some of the controversy, but I wasn't aware of all of the different things that specifically the SSPX community and other traditionalists, had issues with. And there really are, considering the amount, the number of documents and how long they are, there really are only a handful of issues. And like you said, it can be dealt with when you just look at the text itself and don't try to, if you just look at the text rather than reading into the text what you think was the intention of this one person. It's a committee of people, so it's already going to be difficult to try to do that. There's bad actors, there's good actors. Sometimes it's difficult to figure out where some guys are, if they're just, bad intentioned, or they just generally are ignorant of whatever the tradition is. But yeah, when I started diving into it, I was turning over, this stone and that stone. I was like, this is not what, many traditionalists are making it out to be. And so, yeah, Richard and I knew this stuff. We had researched it, and then we said, hey, you want to do a video? And then, I'm always communicating with you stuff. We go back and forth. But yeah, I think that when you look into it, when you look into the history of the documents, you look into the specific people that were putting together the documents, not just the bad actors or the possible bad actors, but even the good guy, even the really good guys. Like, for example, the subsistent in which we talked about before, that was proposed by Sebastian Trump, who was like a major traditionalist there. That was proposed by a traditionalist. And then the traditionalists after Vatican II were like, that's not tradition. It's like, well, that was your guy. So
also regarding subsistence, this word and concept in itself and in Thomism is the strongest means of expressing existence, subsistence. So when traditionalists point at that expression in the document and say, oh, isn't this a waffly kind of wishy-washy means of expressing, where the real true church exists? It's like, no, this is the strongest way to express it, subsistence. I didn't know that till I got back into Thomistic studies this fall, but actually you pointed it out to me in the beginning of the summer. So that's just one.
Well,
5 or 6 issues. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why you need a community of people. Actually, it wasn't me. It was Declue who pointed out that. He's like, this is the word we use for the Trinity. It's like, this is pretty strong.
Yeah.
This is pretty strong. And I was like, I didn't think about that. But what I had turned over was that it was Sebastian Tromp, Tromp, who had suggested it. And he wasn't a liberal at all. I mean, you could show that he's an Orthodox traditional Catholic. And so you kind of like together, in a community dialoguing, it's not just an echo chamber, right? When you have an echo chamber, it's like, This means this. And this person says, yeah, I think it means that too. And it's like, well, this could possibly, provide this, produce this interpretation. And then all of a sudden you're in an echo chamber and you're like, this is the worst thing ever.
Right.
And then you won't let anybody into that echo chamber. And you have a community, guys, you, me, and Richard are all on sort of different pages maybe, but we all come together, we butt heads a little bit, we throw some punches, and then all of a sudden we're like, hey, I think we're all kind of on the same page. That's how this whole thing is supposed to work. We learn from each other. But yeah, I think that I think that once you look into it, like John Paul II said, when he excommunicated Lefebvre in his document, he said that he actually thinks the issue is that the tradition is precisely what has been missed, which is kind of ironic given that he's writing that in that specific document. But when you look into it, you're like, oh yeah, actually, this is very legit stuff. This is actually in accord with the tradition, boosting the tradition, not undermining it in any way. The two-source, one-source theory is another example, but there are a list of others. You just need the facts, and that's sometimes not what we're always getting. So
here's you said a number of things I want to key into. But first, tomorrow, which will be the 19th of December, tomorrow morning, there will be a live stream on Matt Fradd's channel. It'll be he and I talking about why Catholics do have to embrace Vatican II. But even the ones like me who are much more skeptical of what was going on before, during, and after the council, in terms of the personnel and who was really in charge. I think it was bad guys with bad intent. But the documents are a different thing. So I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be raising many points that I got in the first place from you and Declue, and a lot of research since then, since I'm writing this book on Vatican II. And I have my own theory about how you have bad intent from the authors of some of these constitutions and good text, or at least fine text from a traditionally magisterial perspective, whatever. You raised something kind of interesting, though. So everyone watch that show on Fradd tomorrow. But you raised this point about context, Chris. When I left the TNT show, which I'd just like to say something. I've said surprisingly little about that. I'll probably say some tomorrow, and I'll say this for starters. That was in October of 2019, right? That we were kind of getting organized to do the first, at least the first several shows of Rules for Retrogrades with me, you, and Dave. It was October. TNT was winding down. It had been in a very small niche of society within conservative Catholicism. TNT had been something of a sensation, which caught me and Taylor and all of our viewers and listeners off guard. It was weird. I mean, that TNT was a rebrand for Taylor Marshall, as it was a rebrand for me. Now, I'll start with myself. I had been mainly known, the only people who knew me were mainly conservatives, right? I had this Catholic book, Catholic Republic, that had been published by a secular publisher, by actually Milo Yiannopoulos' outfit. And I'd written mainly for secular conservative rags. So there were some Catholics that knew me, but they knew me as kind of a conservative who was a Catholic, instead of probably more, you describe a Catholic who's a conservative, or maybe 50-50, who knows. But I got kind of sucked in with TNT to we were kind of Catholic bad boys. It was fun. We were showing you can be very, very faithful Catholic, which both he and I were and are, and really rebel against Summer of Shame, McCarrick, Francis, whatever, recognize and resist, all that. So it was Catholic bad boys. I got sucked in. A lot of people were just like, oh, this conservative guy is very, very Catholic. And his book, Catholic Republic, wound up being, because of TNT, reprinted on Sophia Institute. But Taylor, let's talk about Taylor for a second. Taylor Well, people tend to forget this. Because of Taylor and Tim, our show, TNT, he did a major rebrand. Before, right, he'd been kind of, was a well-known Catholic, but flying low on the radar, was sort of normie. I'm not saying this in a bad way. He was always well-respected, but he was kind of normie, vanilla Catholic convert. No, I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying he was very pro-Francis and had been vocally pro-Francis before, like we kind of got going, or a little before we got going, and was just kind of faithful, knowledgeable, smart, normie Catholic guy who was an ex-Protestant and shared his story. And that was Taylor Marshall. So it was a major rebrand where both of us were it was almost like the Detroit Pistons bad boys thing. We were like Catholic bad boys, and everyone was interested in what was happening in TNT, and everyone was coming up to me at church and coming up to friends and family. It was really weird, and neither of us saw that coming. I think his channel had fewer subscribers than mine does now, when we got going, at least making our first show together. So in the Vatican II question, sorry I talked so long about that, I just wanted to give context. The Vatican II question was clearly something between us that we were two guys, we didn't really know each other. We just started making shows together and everyone loved them. And everyone was watching, my old law professors, my old philosophy professors, people at church, my priests, everyone that was Catholic in any kind of non-liberal way, non-cultural Catholic way. People had watched it or had heard about it. So we're making shows. We agree about almost everything. But what kept popping up throughout that year we made shows together, a little over a year, 15 months, was this issue of Vatican II. And so you said when you and I and my brother started making shows right after TNT in October of 2019, we didn't know anything about the prominence of the divergence of opinion among faithful Catholics on Vatican II. Yes and no, right? I kind of knew because it had been not a growing rift between Taylor and me, but more like, wow, this is the one thing we really significantly disagree on. Is there a real hermeneutic of continuity? If there is, what is it? There are at least two hermeneutics of continuity. One of them is very wrong. I say one is very right. And by the end, it was kind of clear he was going in that branch of Catholic traditionalists that, and I think this is really important, I'm going to talk about it with Fradd tomorrow, that said, hey, the Francis pontificate, it was just pretty much all bad. It's all bad. It gets worse when you look close at it, unlike Vatican II. It really comes from Vatican II, right? You've seen Archbishop Schneider and Vigano go down that route. And camps like the SSPX are firmly down that route. They don't really want to talk so much about Francis without just bringing it back to, it's all Vatican II's fault. And I just went further down this route. Like, no, I used to believe more along that line, but then I looked into it. And it's like, oh, no. They're totally distinguishable. I mean, Francis is his own thing. One, the crisis begins long before Vatican II, the infiltration. Taylor named his book that. We're actually supposed to co-author that book originally. Then it got kind of severed into two books. I'm writing one too. There is an infiltration of the church, and it was kind of a coming out party at Vatican II. But it was long before Vatican II. And then it didn't really show its head full force until way after Vatican II with Francis. So I don't understand what the fixation with Vatican II is.
Well, I think among who? Among the traditionalists?
Yeah, which was our audience.
Right. Well, I think that one of the reasons that you guys got so popular, not just because you guys were both good hosts and you guys could keep people entertained and keep it interesting and stuff, was also that it all happened during the Summer of Shame. That you had a lot of different things, 1, 2, 3, and then the what was it, the Amazon Synod was the end of that year. I can't even keep track of it.
It was like my last week. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also created sort of the okay, we know something's wrong. If you didn't think something was wrong, now you know something's wrong. So like, then the question became, and this is where I think probably Vatican II became sort of the crowbar that kind of maybe pulled you and Taylor apart. That where do you lay the blame? Someone's got, you got to lay the blame somewhere. Was it Adam? Was it Eve? But ultimately, was it Adam? Sort of thing. Right. Who was responsible for Jesus's death? Was it the Dark Lord? Well, it was him. It was also Judas. It was also the high priest. It was also Pilate, and so on and so forth. So it's like everybody's looking for someone to blame, and that always happens individually, but also societally. Like, everybody I think was like, who do we blame? And I think that many traditionalists had enough resources. They had books they could recommend. They had a whole community called SSPX that said, hey, we've got a really simple answer, and it's Vatican II. And and one of the compelling things about it is it's so simple, right? It's not complex. You don't have to say, well, this happened in the 70s. It gets and then it can get everybody. Nobody wants the complexity. They just want the simplicity. And I think it's easy to just say Vatican II is the issue, and it's an easy fix. Erase all of it, forget all of it, and then let's just go back to the way it was, before. And I think that's what was compelling. But there were some of us that were like, whoa. This is an authoritative council. And I hope tomorrow you bring up with Matt Fradd the Paul VI quote that also gets,
of course,
not misquoted, but just not fully quoted.
Proof texted.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so some of us were like, and Richard and I and you sort of, I think we took seriously obviously we took seriously their questioning of Vatican II. That's why we researched it so much, and we did what we had to do to try to see where the chips were going to fall. So the only difference is we came out the other end. We're like, no, Vatican II was, and I think Vatican II was not just okay. I think it was really, really good. But the things that came after, people needed to find someone to blame or something to blame. And John Paul II, Paul VI, John the 23rd were the people to blame, but the council was the it to blame. And so it was the event that people could blame. And anyway,
here's the weird thing. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to, these are great points. I don't want to miss any of them. The weird thing though is that me and Taylor, during the time we were doing TNT, we were supposed to be co-authoring this book, which became his version of it became Infiltration. Mine will be forthcoming hopefully late 2021. It's called The Sinister 17s, and hopefully I'll have it done this time of the year next year. But the point is, the whole narrative, as you told Taylor when he came on TNT with us like a month in, like, oh, this is great. This is like a narrative form for this centuries-long infiltration. But that doesn't play with the simplicity that not all trads, but many trads flirt with, and you just described it. It's all Vatican II. It's like, and Taylor's kind of in that camp. I mean, not 100%, but he's kind of in that camp. It's all Vatican II. But it's like at the same time he's writing a book, Infiltration, which shows what I'm showing, that this infiltration really happened further back into the 1800s than even his book says. I can show it, but he goes at least to the middle 1800s. He says, I think, kind of like Schneider and Vigano, both of whom I like and respect very much, revere, but disagree with on a couple they say it does extend at least into the present. So what am I missing, right? How can it all be Vatican II? At one time, these people will tell you it's all Vatican II, it ever was, but it begins in the middle 1800s, and our favorite popes, Leo XIII, and all the Piuses are talking about it, which they were. And it comes to present day. They're like, but Vatican II was in the middle of all that. How is it all Vatican II then?
Well, I mean, because Vatican II was the point in which the modernists had infiltrated and that was their grand plan. I think that's how the story goes. So Vatican II was where they all convened. In order to lay the blame on Vatican II, you really kind of have to accept the narrative and come to the conclusion that, okay, this was the grand plan. This is what it was all about, getting them together in a council and changing the church's doctrine, supposedly, and changing the church's liturgy and so on and so forth. So, I mean, the only difference, I think you accept a lot of the premises, but you just don't accept the general conclusion that, Vatican II is bad, it ought to be overthrown. Right? I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, well, I accept the premises and even probably the conclusion when we're talking about discipline, like the Mass.
I think you guys have different conclusions. Well,
not with the Mass. Not with the Mass.
I'm talking about Vatican II.
Yeah, I'm talking about, okay, but you got to take it document by document, and this isn't going to be that long a cast, so we're not going to go through all of them. But, like, take Sacrosanctum Concilium, right, Chris? Like, yeah, I think there's I'm still basically full trad on that. I think they wrote it vague. Now, I'm not full trad. There's nothing bad in the document.
Well, that's the conclusion that I'm saying you guys are disagreeing on.
Okay, then you're right.
So you have your Tim Gordon conclusion that they don't buy. They have a separate conclusion, which is that this document is wrong. It's, yeah. I mean,
yeah, no, I don't. So you're right there, but it's different with discipline and doctrine. There has to be a distinction, kind of like I was telling to Trent Horn when we debated over a year ago. With the disciplines in Sacrosanctum Concilium, I mean, I think what you said is all right, but it's easier to say, look, there's weaponized ambiguity. I call it codified heteropraxy. Look at some of these quotes from some of these guys like Scalabix that said, we wrote it vaguely, Sacrosanctum Concilium, so that later we could have something that's magisterially sound. It's a sacred constitution. And it doesn't have anything that's obviously really bad in terms of describing the new liturgy. But then we'll just take it and without contradicting it, we'll add all this way, way worse stuff when we actually write the new missal of 69 or 70, whatever you call that, December of 69. That's full-on codified heteropraxy. I think there's evidence they did know what they're going to do, whatever. But this isn't the main sticking point anyway, and I do think we should go back to the Latin Mass, like universally. Strongly, I think that. But who cares? A later council can do that. It's not my job. I can go to the Latin Mass now, and I do. But when it comes to their main issues, right, which are these semi-doctrinal or paradoctrinal issues like, religious liberty, that's the big one. And what they say about the sacred constitutions, what they say about Judaism, Islam, all this other stuff. And the main other issue is what you brought up about Paul VI's characterization of the council itself, as you don't really have to listen, council. And their characterization, traditionalists, of it as the only mainly pastoral council. That's just not right. So, I mean, these are just factual errors. There are like 3 or 4 other pastoral councils. You still have to accept them, and you still have to accept in a spirit of like religious submission what all of the pastoral councils say, even if they can be changed later by the magisterium. That's by the church can change them, whereas the church even can't change its own doctrine. That's the difference. But we can't just say, oh, well, this is kind of bad pastoral stuff, so we're going to ignore it. And even Paul VI said this, and he's misquoted by trads and too often. And the fact that this is a sui generis council, insofar as being the only pastoral council in ecumenical council's history, that's just wrong. And I was repeating some of these things. And so to tie it to the train wreck, or worse, of the Francis Pontificate, number 266, is really unfair. It's unfair to the council, even though unlike you, I do think the council, many of the people running the show had darkling motives. I'm quite convinced. Who cares? The documents themselves cannot be in any appreciable way be tied to Francis, and I'm going to show it in my book, and I'm going to show it on Matt Fradd tomorrow, because we'll probably go for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've appreciated about you, and I think why shows like Matt Fradd's and yours and what you guys are doing tomorrow is important, is because there can be this echo chamber where someone lays out the facts, right? And most people, I mean, I teach theology for a living, and it's hard to even investigate, all these things on my own. And this is a passion of mine. and something that, you know, I spend time doing. Lots of people don't have the time nor the interest. So when people put out facts about Vatican II and they just list them, everybody's like, oh, you know, okay, you know, he must be right. You know, he's got a PhD, or, you know, he's been teaching the faith or whatever for so long, and you just assume it. And because they won't get into the ring with anybody. You know, I was looking forward to my debate on Timothy Flanders' show, but like, because no one will get in the ring with each other and sort of duke it out over, you know, these single issues, there's not a lot of progress that can be made. Rather, it's just one group saying one thing with a big platform. There's another group that's kind of saying one thing with a big platform, and they never clash, and they never interact. And there needs to be like a YouTube channel where there's like inter-Catholic dialogue, where people from different sides and can, like, I know Dave did a debate with an XSPX dude, I think it was, or something. I thought that was cool. But, you know, there needs to be more of that. And I think when you stop talking to each other, and when you're not willing, you're willing to put something out there, but you're not willing to defend it with somebody else, you know, in real time. Right. I think that's unfortunate. And the victims are the people that are listening, that don't have the time or the knowledge to deal with any of these facts. And this is why you know, there is a responsibility that you guys have on your shows. And that's why I think it's right of you and Fradd to get on tomorrow and discuss the issues.
Yeah, I like that. That's the other opening statement you made that I really like, that I wanted to get into. And I would put it this way, with 100% agreement. There's a moral responsibility to maintain what leftists call an open mind on these issues, and let the truth dictate where one goes with one's revelations as one researches, right? Like, I mean, I think Declue contacted you first because he knew we were friends, and he was like, whatever, like, I'm hoping Tim can be open-minded here, but here are some facts that are like indisputable about Vatican II that, you know, Declue knew. Tim's a Thomistic philosopher. It's not even some insult. How would he know this stuff? Yes, I teach theology to high school students, but at a high level, I'm a Thomistic philosopher. It's above my pay grade. So he pointed them out to me. I checked him out, and guess what? He's right. So it's even more basic, more fundamental than just we need to talk to all of the sides in right-wing Catholicism. And these are people that are pretty close to me issue by issue, you know, or pretty close to you issue by issue, and if we're not super zoomed in. And yet they hate you, and a lot of them hate me and won't talk to me, and they won't talk to you. A lot of them won't talk to Dave. A lot of them don't even care what Fradd says, even though he's a right-wing faithful Catholic. So people get super, super tribalistic in deep Catholicism, and your point speaks to that and addresses that really nicely. But more fundamentally than that, what I don't see enough of is people getting in these shows and being like, oh, that point you raised right there, like, that really strikes a chord. And I'm thinking about it right now. I'm going to have to go think about it. But yeah, I think you may be right and I may be wrong. How come that doesn't happen more? Right?
Actually, you'd honestly be surprised. I think I don't know how many people it happened to, but we got contacted by a lot of traditionalists that, because of our video, they had totally flipped. Some had left the SSPX. They, you know, because I think it's basically the battle of the books. I think a lot of people that get into this, they start reading books. Like, someone's going to read Taylor's book, then they're going to read your book, and there's going to be two different conclusions, two different perspectives. And I think that people read. I've been reading a lot of the more SSPX literature, and just the people that are more traditionalists who have criticized Vatican II in the past, dating all the way back to right after the council. And it totally makes sense why so many people get sucked into this thinking, because the books, I mean, when you have a book in front of you, it feels different, right? It's different than like having a person. Like, when someone has printed a book, that means that they've gone through a publisher, most likely, that has edited their book and has a whole company has considered this person worthy of writing a book. And so I think that when you have that book and you can feel it, you kind of feel the weight of the author's authority. And then as you start to read and there's things that are cited, I've got a couple of the books in the back shelf that I was reading. I'm like, no, I could totally see how this could just suck people in. And this is why I think, to another point, not only your show tomorrow, but your book is going to be really good, because when someone sits down and reads it, they can draw a different conclusion than what, say, Taylor or other traditionalists are drawing concerning Vatican Two. I can't remember the original point that I was saying. But anyways, yeah.
This is an interesting conversation that I had with Christine Niles
when
she came on my show a couple weeks back. There's a spectrum of perspectives and feelings on the Catholic right about all of these issues. And it's not just one issue. It's not just Vatican II. It's not just the SSPX, which I don't dislike. Like this, and I don't pretend that I'm not much closer to them than the McCarrick left wing of the church. Of course I am. Of course I'm a lot closer to them. Just the ones that it sounds like I dislike are the ones that start calling names and setting stuff on fire on Twitter. Just when I'm like, well, hold on, hear me out. Check your bottom line of math there. I think you actually forgot to carry the one, and that's all I want to do. I mean, it doesn't like Declue did with me, or you do with me behind the scenes. And sometimes I'm like, oh shoot, you're right. Yeah, I forgot to carry the one. Thank you, thanks. Other times I'm like, no, I didn't carry the one. You're a moron for thinking. Or we joke, and then we whatever. Yeah. Sometimes you agree to that was an error on my part. Other times you don't, and it's just like, okay, we're not going to agree about any things. It only sounds like with these people who are much closer to fellow travelers than anyone on the left part of the church, anyone that really is embarrassed by Catholic tradition and thinks we need to move on.org. I don't hate any of them, right? I mean, SSPX, 100%. There's so much good that came out of it in the first decades of it, and then there's gonna be disagreement over what happened in 1988, and there was disagreement. And guess what? A branch of FSSP broke off from SSPX because of what happened in 1988, and they don't hate each other, but they're rivals insofar as FSSP broke off, and that's fine. But there's no hate there, and now you keep things civil, and there's an acknowledgement that it's a branch within a branch within a branch, meaning they agree about much. But it's just strange when people, SSPX people really hate Church Militant, because Church Militant is much closer to their point of view than other folks. But even within Church Militant, this is what I talked about with Christine. Voris has a perspective that's his own on the SSPX. Niles has a perspective that's her own. She's like, I'm not interested in the canonical thing. I don't get hopped up over it, for or against, really. I'm pretty sympathetic to a lot of their points of view. I think Voris is too, but maybe Niles, I'm just hypotheticaling this out. I think she's, hypothetically anyway, a little more sympathetic canonically. Maybe I'm misreading her, but same thing with the perspective that Dave has for SSPX and me. It's similar yet distinguishable. Maybe one of the two of us, if you take any two human beings in the law of averages, one's going to be just care less or be slightly more sympathetic. That's how all human beings are. That's how me and you are. You're definitely, there's more internal stuff impelling you to say, I'm not just neutral towards Vatican II. I don't just accept it. I think it's wonderful, whatever you say about it. I mean, that's cool. That's your perspective. You're a really smart guy, and I've learned a lot from you. And Dave's a really smart guy, and I've learned a lot from him. I have SSPX friends that I text with almost every single day, and I've learned stuff from them. I mean, this is not just the balance obsession. I'm not obsessed with balance. If you were to check my temperament, the way Matt Fradd, smart guy, he's more kind of balance first. That's not my natural thing. I'm just saying from an objective perspective, I learned from guys that are right-wing Catholics, traditional, loving Catholics that sound much less traddy like you, or like Richard, still tratty, but don't sound like it. And I learned from people that sound way thornier than even, Taylor or your average Taylor fan. So I dislike when dishonesty gets into the mix. In law school, we all noticed the same thing in our first year. In criminal law, since no one had ever studied it from any of the majors, you're not really allowed to study crim law. There's no pre-crim law studies. You get in there and the whole class is just kind of learning together, and no one understands the way the variant theories of criminal law pertain to various ideologies. Till the end of class, you kind of get it. But everyone's just kind of reasoning together as a group. It's rather lovely. You're all just you're trying to figure out, is this first-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter or second-degree murder or involuntary manslaughter? And you're kind of just learning the qualifications for those 4 types of homicide. Just giving an example. And no one's got any agenda. It's just literally where the truth leads you. That's my vision for the right-wing laity in the Catholic Church, including the SSPX people or not. I don't really care. It's just we should be reasoning these things out as according to truth and facts, and leave our emotions at the door. Just like, oh yeah, good point. Kind of like I did in my crim law class. You go into constitutional law class your first year of law school, and everyone already knows where they're at. I like the Constitution. I'm a conservative. I don't like the Constitution. I'm not a conservative. And that informs and perverts all their ways of thinking, at least the anti-Constitution people. But you don't have that happen in crim law. I want the Catholic Church to be more like my crim law class experience, not my constitutional law experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like a big thing for me is the breakdown of communication. Like when people stop, I mean, this happens in families, this happens in, amongst colleagues and amongst friends. As soon as you stop talking to each other, it's so easy for a month to turn into 6 months, and 6 months to turn into a year, and a year turn into he's my enemy forever. And I am in favor of people who have major disagreements duking it out in a public, if they're both public figures, in a public forum. I don't think everybody needs to. I mean, clearly we can learn from Jesus, because on multiple occasions our Lord can tell that there's ill will with some people. Like they'll come to him and Jesus is like, you're not serious about what you're asking me, and he'll just kind of brush it aside and walk away. So we can learn from that if we're like, yeah, this person I think is just like, oftentimes that's been my experience too with dealing with this issue. I'm like, I really don't think this person's genuinely interested in learning anything, so I'll dip out with that person. But I think that we want to try our best to, or I try my best to assume that the person has goodwill, is a man of goodwill, and is interested in learning the truth with me. And I think that allows me to try to keep an open line of communication with them, and that allows us to possibly dialogue in the future. But I just see between like Christine Niles, Church Militant, SSPX, you, Taylor, a lot of others out there, it's just there's been a breakdown in communication. There's probably, somebody said something and now there's built up resentment or whatever. So we got to do what Jesus says, forgive each other, forgive our brothers, and so on and so forth. But there also has to be a duking it out, I think, a genuine dialogue in, I know that's not a good word to just be like, okay, let's debate. A genuine debate. I mean, dialogue is used in the New Testament, I think, over 20 times. It's just dialogos. It's engaging in a back and forth, my perspective, your premise, my premise, and then we, and you defend each of them. So, I mean, I'm all in favor for it, and that's why I like you and Trent. I mean, look at you and Trent, right? Two guys that love to duke it out. You guys have bumped heads a lot in the last year, but you guys are still good friends. I mean, you guys are still friends and you guys respect each other. And it's like, that's what can come of when communication doesn't break down, when you keep at it, you keep going back and forth. And it's like, you're like, hey, I disagree with you, but I respect you. And it leaves open the opportunity for further discussion.
Yeah, it's like, why does everyone like Jim and Dwight? in The Office. It's beautiful by the end of the series where they're kind of frenemies the whole time. And then in the end, they're actually just, in season 9, they're just like, yeah, we're just friends. Like, it's corniness aside, that's really lovely. When I debated Trent Horn, we didn't even know each other, and there was not any real camaraderie like when I was in their studios. But after, then you see how, I think we each saw how each other dealt with the fallout from the debate. And it's just like, man, I just respect that this guy does this, that he has position. I think Trent's used to winning handily because he's smart and he's a good debater. And he also debates cocky, a lot of times Protestants, people. I think he just usually wins handily. Whenever you think of our debates, I don't want to sound cocky, but he's not used to debating such complex issues as death penalty or feminism. I'll put it that way. But either way, the way he dealt with it, and then he just rolled on. He keeps debating people. Like, it's good for the soul to be one of these guys that's got a public mic and you're willing to debate, like you're pointing out. And it makes me like and respect people like Trent Horn more. I like him more now and am more friends with him after I debated him, because you get, like they say in The Godfather 1, you get the bad blood out, you kind of leave it all on the floor, and then you're just like, if that guy beat me, then that's fine. Like, if I think I'm a really good basketball player, me and you are always bringing it back to one-on-one basketball, right? And I think I'm the best, and you think you're the best. There's natural tension mounting, and then we go put it on the floor. And as long as one side's not point shaving, November the 3rd, America, as long as there's no cheating involved, if A beats B, then A is like, okay, I'm happy, and wow, he put up a good contest. He is a really good second. But if you're A and B beats you, you're just like, okay, I guess I was wrong. I thought I was the best, and I'm the second best, and that's pretty good too. But the tension is all relaxed when you actually are willing to go have those debates. So I think you're really, really on to something, Chris, when you talk about like the communication breakdown is the worst thing, because then every party that refuses to debate or blocks you or won't talk to you then just goes back to their side. The tension is still there because they're still like, I'm the best, I could beat him, but I'm not going to. Kind of like what happened with you on the Meaning of Catholic thing. It's like, that was weird. I'm not going to pretend that wasn't weird. You guys would have been more like Trent and Tim. Now I support him. I like his socialism book. I push his socialism book, which everyone should buy because it's that good. I like when I see him debate Protestants. I just think he's wrong on Francis. I think he was borderline wrong on feminism and probably outright wrong on death penalty. But who cares? He's right on most stuff. And when he's right, he's a really good guy to listen to and to have on your team. He should be doing what he's doing. He's in the right profession, right? He does a good job. No one's right about everything, including me and you. But because that didn't happen between you and Matt Gaspers, the tension never gets relieved, did it? And so now it's just weird. I don't know what happened there, but it would have been friend. You could have gone and drank a beer afterwards and become more friendly after you get the bad blood out. It's really important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it ends like, I'm looking back at like, like playing basketball or baseball or football, like you do get into, especially with basketball, I always found that, if you're competitive with basketball, you're bound to get into a fight with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, and plus, if you're not competitive, like no one likes having you on the team. So the guys out there on the court are usually like very competitive. But, after a basketball game, if you get beat, the thing is like you learn humility, right? You learn humility. And the cool thing is when the other guy's like, yeah, I beat you, but hey, man, like you're really good. And he puffs up, he looks at the good in you and he's like, I see the good that's in you. You still lost, but I still see the good that's in you. And let's go up maybe on another day on another topic and let's duke it out. And you do form friendships. I mean, the people I fought with the most were some of my closest friends growing up. And we would fight about all sorts of issues. And I just think that like one of the things that can come of it is a deep friendship and a deep respect for each other. But sometimes, guess what? Sometimes you might walk away and be like, I'm never going to talk to that guy again. you forgive them in your heart. But like sometimes it just doesn't work out. I mean, you don't have to be friends with everyone, and you don't have to necessarily get along or agree with everyone on everything. But you do try to go out there. And the issue with this though is it's not a basketball game. It's actual truth itself, right. And it's truth that pertains to Jesus Christ and his Holy Catholic Church. And so there is a sense in which like you feel like you're defending our Lord himself, and it's different. It's not a game. It's real life. There's some parallels, but so it might be a little different in some sense if you think more about that. But still, I think that friendship is key, communication is key, and I'm excited for the Matt Fradd interview you got going. I'm excited for the book. When's the book going to be out?
I gotta. It's a short book. It should be soon. In between semesters, I gotta get this thing finished. The debate, of course, not debate. The interview with Fradd is tomorrow on his channel. I think it's 10 p.m. though. I'm gonna have to check which local time that is. 10 a.m.
It's live streamed.
Is live streamed, and check. It might be 9 or 8 depending on where you're at, people. So listen and watch me on Matt Fradd. We're gonna get into a lot more details. This was just supposed to be a booster. This wound up, I think. A lot of good insights here. Kind of wound up like a self-help special. We started at Vatican Two, and we're talking about the value of contestation among human males. Iron sharpening iron.
There were so many basketball analogies because your sweatshirt.
Yeah.
I was, when I was thinking when we were talking about the blaming Vatican Two, I was totally thinking about the first game of the Lakers where they lost to the Clippers, and I was like wanting to draw an analogy there. It's like, well, they've only been together 9 days as a team, and we've only had Vatican Two. Some people think that 30 years, what is it, 40 years now, is a lot, but no, well over 40. It's 50 years. When did it end? 65. Yeah, so. I wanted to draw. Whenever I looked at your sweatshirt, I was like, I should draw a basketball analogy here. I kept thinking Lakers. Go Lakers.
No, don't, because they have LeBron. But no, man, I want to give you props. Dude, don't even start that. Don't even start that with me. I want to give you props. If you say something about LeBron, I'm never going to talk to you again. No, I just want to thank you, publicly on the show for not only being a good friend and lots of battles we fought together when we worked together, but having you on the show, and both you and Richard really, really opened my eyes. A few slight tweaks go a long way in the end. I still have the basic equipoise with regard to Vatican II. I'm very mistrustful of the council itself and what happened just before and just after, but it's a big deal to be pointed out some of the things you guys pointed out, and a minor adjustment can yield a major dispositional change, and it did in me. And it's just because you guys factually brought it to me and were like, hey, don't be mad, but look at this. That's what people need. That's all we've been talking about today, and that's all. Yeah. That's all I'm going to be doing on Fradd's show tomorrow. But I do want to thank you. I do respect you a lot, as well as have you as a friend, and I'm grateful for that going into weird 2021.
Yeah. No, it's great having you as a friend, and if only people heard all the fights we've been in over the years. We've gotten into it, and it's like, we scream at each other, yell at each other, we get into it, and then you own up to where you've fallen short, and you move on, and you just try to duke it out. But it's fun. It's great having you as a friend, man. And we've been through the ringer together, obviously at Garces, and then just over this last year and everything. It's cool to, I always wondered why Aristotle talked about friendship so much, and same with Aquinas. And I'm like, with your friendship in particular, I'm like, I could see why it's so important. I've learned a lot from you, and it's been a great friendship, and also challenging me in what is a friend actually, what is involved in being a good friend, Yeah. And it's something I've thought a lot about, because as you get older, you don't have as many friends because you got your family. And so you have to figure out who's going to be there with me, who's going to be, a friend, and how do I be a good friend? And no, I've appreciated. I mean, we've been good friends now for so many years, and I'm looking forward to the many years and the many discussions and debates, but also the good times, even though you're all the way out in Mississippi and not in beautiful, sunny, not today, but sunny California.
Amen, man. Yeah, friendship, the kingly virtue. And one of Jesus's least hailed miracles, you know what it was? Is the fact that he had 12 friends he saw frequently in his 30s.
Yeah, that's right. Jesus had 12 close friends in his 30s. That's his greatest miracle after the resurrection.
Yeah, after the resurrection. Pope Francis would be like, no, that's it. It's that he shared, right? The loaves and the fishes was just sharing. And the miracle of friendship, those are his two literal greatest ones. So he would take that.
It's keeping 11 of those friends after you're considered, dead, and you resurrect, and you're like, hey, the 11 guys want to hang out. So
truly miraculous. So anyway, God bless you, Chris. I probably won't see you that soon, but I will talk to you soon. And everybody, remember, January the 19th, a new class, a new section of Aristotle's Nicomachean and Ethics opens. Go to timothyjgordon.com. You can support me there. If you click donate, if you won't click enroll, you can get involved in this great second running of the Aristotle course. We had a section of 200. The first semester, it was great. People, just ask anybody that took it. It's life-changing stuff. January the 19th is the first class of the second running of Aristotle's Ethics. Deus Volt, everybody. Please see my Patreon account, and let's pray for a much better 2021 than 2020. Watch me tomorrow on Matt Fradd. It's going to be good. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Deus Volt.
Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is.
If you like this video and my other work, please consider supporting me on Patreon page or at timothyjgordon.com.